At 11:47 p.m., my phone lit up the way truth always does. Sharp, uninvited, impossible to ignore. A message from my mother. "We've talked. You're no longer part of this family. Don't come to any gatherings. Please respect our decision." No greeting, no explanation, no pause for breath. Just a clean, digital execution. Before I could even set the phone down, my sister Mara reacted to the message with a heart. Not a reply, not confusion, just a heart, as if exile were something to celebrate, or at least acknowledge politely. Like betrayal was a team decision, and she was proud to be on the winning side. I waited for the sting, the rush of heat behind the eyes, the familiar ache in my chest. It didn't come. What I felt instead was something colder, heavier, a stillness that scared me more than tears ever had. I placed the phone face down on the table and opened my laptop. The apartment was quiet in a way that felt observant. The refrigerator hummed softly. The wall clock ticked, steady and patient. Every sound felt like a witness. I sat at the small desk by the window, city lights blinking through the glass, and logged into my bank account. For years, I had been the invisible hinge holding my family together. Not the center, not the favorite, the hinge, the thing no one noticed until it stopped working. The first payment I saw was the mortgage, their house, my name still attached to it, quietly ensuring it never missed a due date. I hovered over the cursor longer than I expected, then clicked Cancel Autopay. Nothing dramatic happened. No alarms, no warning screens, just a confirmation message. I moved to the utilities, electricity, water, internet, all the things that made their life comfortable and uninterrupted. One by one, I turned them off. Not immediately, just enough to let the system do what it always did when no one was paying attention. At 12:03 a.m., I canceled the last recurring transfer. I leaned back in my chair, hands resting on the keyboard, heart steady in a way that felt unfamiliar. This wasn't anger. Anger had always been loud, messy, emotional. This felt precise, controlled, almost professional. For years, I'd told myself I was helping, that family meant sacrifice, that love was endurance. Every late-night call that began with, "We just need a little help this month," I answered without question. Every crisis, every tearful apology followed by the same mistake, I absorbed quietly. I had mistaken dependency for devotion. I glanced around my apartment. Everything was neat, labeled, organized, color-coded files, stacked folders, clean surfaces. Order was my coping mechanism. After a childhood spent managing everyone else's chaos, I'd learned to build control wherever I could. Tonight, that control finally turned inward. I thought about the last dinner we'd had together 6 months earlier. My mother correcting my posture at the table, Mara bragging about a business trip I knew was a beach resort, my father joking that I was too serious to keep a man. I smiled, passed the potatoes, swallowed every response. That table had been a courtroom. I just hadn't realized I was the one on trial. Now, sitting alone in the glow of my laptop, I opened a new document. Not an email, not a message, a spreadsheet. Date, amount, reason, proof. My fingers moved easily, like they'd been waiting for permission. They thought they'd erased me with a text message. They had no idea they'd just given me the quiet I needed to finally see everything clearly. By morning, my phone looked like a crime scene. Missed calls, voicemails, texts stacked on top of each other, names glowing like artifacts from a life I'd already stepped out of. I didn't open any of them. I already knew the tone. Confusion first, then irritation, then fear. Fear always came last. The silence in my apartment felt different in daylight, less heavy, more deliberate. Sunlight slipped through the blinds, landing on the desk where my laptop still sat open, the spreadsheet waiting like an unfinished sentence. I poured coffee and sat back down. Row by row, I began filling it in. The first entry was from 8 years earlier, the property tax payment that saved my Karen's house. I remembered the phone call clearly, my mother's voice shaking, saying they were days away from foreclosure. I was 25, barely managing my own rent, but I wired the money without hesitation. She'd called me her angel. Angels, I learned, don't get paid back. Next came the utilities, months where the lights never flickered because I'd quietly covered the bill. The car insurance my father borrowed my card for, promising it was just temporary. It renewed automatically for 3 years after that. Then Mara's tuition. $17,800 a year, 3 years straight. No contract, no acknowledgement beyond a casual, "I'll pay you back once I'm stable," a sentence that aged badly and often. Each entry brought back a memory. Not dramatic ones, small, cutting details. Me skipping a vacation because they needed help just this once. Me lying awake calculating how long I could float them before it started sinking me. I told myself it was responsibility, that being the dependable one mattered. What I never questioned was why it was always me. Growing up, I'd learned early that usefulness was my currency. My mother praised me most when I solved problems quietly. My father admired efficiency, not emotion. And Mara thrived because someone else cleaned up behind her. I became that someone. The pattern was so clear now, it almost embarrassed me. Every crisis ended with me transferring money. Every resolution ended with them moving on, lighter, freer, unchanged. At 9:14 a.m., a text finally slipped through my focus. "Dad, can you explain what's going on with the utilities? Your mother's upset." No apology, no question about the message from the night before, just confusion that the system had stopped working. I didn't respond. Another message followed, this time from Mara. "Mara, you're overreacting. Mom didn't mean it like that. Can we just talk?" Talk. The word had been weaponized years ago. Talking meant smoothing things over, absorbing blame, resetting the cycle. I deleted the message and returned to my spreadsheet. Every number I typed felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. I wasn't rewriting history. I was finally recording it. By noon, the entries filled 3 full pages. I paused, fingers hovering over the keyboard, and realized something unsettling. I wasn't sad. The guilt I'd carried for years, the constant fear of being selfish, ungrateful, dramatic, was fading. In its place was a strange, quiet certainty. This wasn't cruelty. It was accounting. Outside, the city moved on like nothing had changed. Cars passed, people laughed on the sidewalk. Somewhere across town, my family was starting to realize the lights didn't turn back on by themselves. And for the first time in my life, I let them sit with that realization alone. By mid-afternoon, the tone of the messages shifted. Confusion had turned into irritation, irritation into urgency. My phone buzzed across the desk, rattling softly with each new attempt to pull me back into place. I didn't pick it up. I already knew the script by heart. First, they asked what was wrong. Then they demanded explanations. Then they reminded me of everything they'd ever done for me. I kept typing. The spreadsheet grew longer, cleaner, more damning. Dates aligned, amounts stacked. Patterns emerged so clearly it felt like uncovering a map I'd been following, blindfolded for years. At 3:06 p.m., my mother emailed me. No greeting, no acknowledgement of the message she'd sent the night before. "We need to talk about what you've done. You've created a mess. Call us immediately." I read it twice. Not what she'd done, not what she'd said, what I had done. I replied with one sentence. I'm reconciling accounts. You should do the same. The phone rang within seconds. I let it buzz until it stopped. For the first time, I understood something that would have saved me years earlier. Silence wasn't weakness. Silence was leverage. The panic spread quickly after that. Dad, please call us. We don't understand what's happening. Mara, why are you doing this? You're ruining everything. Mom, this isn't how family behaves. I watched the messages arrive without opening them, the screen lighting up like flares fired into darkness. Their world had always been stable because I made it so. Now, with that stability gone, they were forced to face the mess they called normal. I opened my banking app again and scrolled back years. Transfers at odd hours, emergency payments disguised as favors, my name attached to things I'd never owned, obligations I'd never enjoyed. I felt something loosen inside me. The guilt that had been sewn into me since childhood, stitched in with every be the bigger person, every don't make it worse, began to unravel. At 6:22 p.m., my mother posted on social media. Some people forget who raised them once they start doing well. Pride comes before destruction. The post gathered likes quickly. Relatives who hadn't spoken to me for years chimed in with vague sympathy and moral superiority. I didn't respond. I took a screenshot. That was the moment the situation stopped being emotional and became strategic. Public narratives mattered. Timelines mattered. Proof mattered. At 7:40 p.m., I made one call. Renee, I said when she answered, I think I'm ready to stop being quiet. Renee Cole had been my friend since college. She had also become a family law attorney, specializing in disputes that began with phrases like, "We never thought it would come to this." She didn't ask me what happened. She didn't need to. Then start documenting everything, she said calmly. We'll make it official. After the call ended, I returned to my desk and began organizing with purpose. Emails archived, receipts labeled, screenshots saved with timestamps. The chaos of years condensed into neat digital folders. By midnight, my laptop looked less like a workspace and more like a case file. I closed the lid and sat back in the quiet. For the first time, I wasn't trying to fix anything. I was preparing to prove it. The second night was quieter than the first, but the quiet had teeth. My apartment glowed softly from the laptop screen as I sat cross-legged on the floor, documents spread around me like pieces of a puzzle I was finally allowed to finish. Every file I opened stripped another layer of denial away. This wasn't miscommunication. It wasn't misunderstanding. It was pattern. At 10:18 p.m., Renee called. Everything ready? She asked. I looked at the folders on my screen. Years of payments, signed agreements that led nowhere, emails asking for help that never turned into repayment. Every receipt, I said. Every transfer. Good, she replied. Then you're not asking for anything, you're enforcing it. She told me exactly what to write. Not emotional, not accusatory, just precise. A formal notice. Subject: outstanding balances, Ward family accounts. The words felt heavy as I typed them, not because they were cruel, but because they were true. This email serves as formal notice of reimbursement due for documented financial support provided over the last 8 years. A repayment plan must be initiated within 30 days to avoid further action. No insults, no threats, no room for manipulation. I attached the spreadsheet, every line item clean and undeniable. When I hit send, I didn't feel relief. I felt alignment. 12 minutes later, the replies flooded in. Dad, let's not be dramatic. We can talk about this. Mom, how could you do this to your own family? Mara, "You've lost your mind." Different voices, same message. They weren't shocked by the numbers. They were shocked I'd stopped pretending they didn't exist. At 12:03 a.m., my phone rang nonstop. Calls stacked, voicemails piled up. My mother's voice cracked through one message, panic leaking through her authority. "Turn the payments back on. We'll fix this tomorrow." But tomorrow had already arrived. Renee's message followed seconds later. "Perfect. Forward everything. We're filing a demand letter in the morning." I stared at my name at the bottom of the email. Elena Ward. I'd signed that name so many times to save them. Checks, contracts, transfers made in good faith. Tonight, that signature meant something different. Another message from Mara popped up. "You think this makes you strong? You're heartless." Heartless. The word used to hurt. Now it felt like a boundary. I poured myself a glass of water. Hands steady, mind clear. This wasn't revenge. Revenge was loud and chaotic. This was correction. Before shutting the laptop, I opened one final document I hadn't touched yet. The property deed. Their house, the one they bragged about owning free and clear, was still under my name. I'd never transferred the title. Not out of control, out of instinct. I closed the file and leaned back against the couch. They'd told me I was out of the family. Now I was ready to make it official. Morning arrived like nothing had changed. Sunlight crept across the floor. Traffic hummed outside. Somewhere in the city, coffee machines hissed and doors opened on schedule. The world moved on, indifferent to the fact that an entire family structure was beginning to collapse under the weight of its own lies. At 9:12 a.m., my phone rang. I recognized my father's number immediately. He never called first. He preferred delegating the emotional labor to my mother. "Elena," he said, voice soft, careful. "This has gone too far. Let's keep this private." I let the silence stretch just long enough to make him uncomfortable. "It is private," I said calmly. "It's just documented now." He exhaled sharply. "You're making your mother sick." "No," I replied. "She made herself sick. I just stopped paying for the treatment." The line went dead. By noon, my mother posted again. Another public plea wrapped in moral language. Another attempt to control the story. "We raised her with love. Now she's turning against us for money." This time, the comments didn't fall in line. A distant cousin asked a question. An aunt mentioned the foreclosure years ago. Someone else brought up Mara's tuition. The narrative cracked. At 1:41 p.m., Renee emailed me. Subject, additional discovery. Attached was a PDF, bank records, highlighted and annotated. Her message was short. Inheritance withdrawal, $38,000, signature mismatch, likely forgery. I sat very still. The kitchen remodel, the new appliances, the timeline aligned perfectly. My grandmother's trust, money meant for me, had been drained and signed away without my knowledge. I forwarded everything to Renee. By noon, their accounts froze. That night, my mother stood outside my apartment door, eyes red, clutching an envelope like it could still save her. "Elena," she whispered, "please do something for your sister." "For Mara?" I asked. She nodded. I handed her the paper already waiting on my table. The eviction notice. "You'll get the official copy in 7 days," I said quietly. She stared at me, searching for the version of her daughter who fixed things, funded things, forgave things. That daughter was gone. "Goodbye," I said, and closed the door. Weeks later, the household, the deed, still in my name, transferred cleanly. Debts returned to their rightful owners. The money landed in my account without ceremony. No triumph, no celebration, just balance. I moved into a small apartment downtown. Clean walls, morning light, no emergencies. One night, I opened the old spreadsheet, the one that had started it all, and deleted it. I slept through until morning. Peace isn't loud. It's quiet, and it's earned.